a lovely session so far. Thank you, Mr. Satyakam Arya, for joining us for this important session on safety and commercial vehicles. Just a little bit about safety and commercial vehicles. As of 2021, over 40 million commercial vehicles that are plying on Indian roads were over 15 years old. With enforcement being a significant challenge in the country, many of them ply without even fitness certificate. So in an environment where overloading of truck is a common phenomenon, these are sadly, safety hazards on the wheels. While the government has come out with a scrappage scheme, it is still not mandatory. Majority of new commercial vehicles sold in the country are still chassis based or on cowls, as they are famously called. And these are largely owned by smaller individual truck owners who end up going to unorganized bodybuilders in order to save cost. While there are mandated regulations on bodybuilding, one is not sure of whether these are followed well. The commercial vehicle market and the sector actually suffers from numerous other issues: lack of trained drivers, availability of drivers, and the ones who are driving are either overworked or lack skills to traverse the difficult and diverse terrains of India. Given the environment, there have been proactive corporates like Daimler who were extremely bold to enter India and sell only fully built vehicles. Daimler has led from the front on safety and reliability since its entry. To talk about how one can make roads safer and more about what is the role of the government, policymakers, enforcement agencies, and vehicle makers in order to reduce the casualties on Indian roads and even make drivers' life easier who are usually overworked. Mr. Satyakam Arya, if you could share your insight on these and many issues. We are really looking forward to your insight. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, good evening, Ketan, and good evening to everyone who is on this call. And I think it's a pleasure to be here today and to connect back with you, and especially to talk about this very important topic of road safety. I think everyone knows how much we lag behind the rest of the world when it comes to road safety. And therefore, I believe that this picture will not change unless some things which we have never done are done in future. So, well, you talked a lot about the CV industry, or let's say the dynamics of CV industry in India, the structure of CV industry in India. And I believe those all are the challenges which we are currently facing. They are also the opportunities if we try to change the lens and look at it differently. And the sad part is, or it's ironic, that the CV industry is the barometer of the economy, but it is still quite unregulated. And the drivers, which are, we always say that they are the unsung heroes of our economy, are actually not cared for enough. In the last few months or years, we have also seen that the chorus on sustainability has gone up dramatically. But it's right now quite a lot focused on zero emission technologies. Well, safety is also a very important aspect of sustainability. And I think the regulations need to be implemented in a much different way than they have been done so far, with the strong intent of transforming the CV industry. I think everyone who is involved in this ecosystem, whether it's government or the regulators, whether it's OEMs or the fleet owners and the drivers, have a very important role to play when it comes to safety.
Right. So what's your assessment on the current road safety challenges? I mean, you spoke about enforcement, but over the last 5 years, we've seen multiple new regulations that have come up that has moved towards making vehicles more safer. However, the number of deaths on road and commercial vehicles do contribute a significant pie of the reasons behind deaths on Indian roads. What is your personal assessment on, the factors behind the number of accidents, and how can we reduce the number of deaths on Indian road, and what role can, commercial vehicle makers or the overall ecosystem can, bring in?
There are a lot of reasons for why the situation is like this today. And I think the most important reason is our attitude towards safety. And I'm talking about everyone in the ecosystem, right? Including the people who drive and meet those accidents, right? So we have to, as a country, as a nation, change our attitude towards safety. We have to get more sensitive on safety. And then if you look at the different actors in the game, government, OEMs, fleet owners, or drivers, they all have to do their bit. Right. And let me first start with the regulators first. Well, if you look at the landscape of regulations when it comes to safety in the CV industry, I think we have a lot of catch-up to do. We started our journey of regulations way back in 98, 2000, when we started with very basic regulations like on stopping distance, deceleration, steering, those aspects, very, very basic, much needed. We did that. And then in 2004 and 5, we started talking about harmonizing the road safety regulations in India with, for example, Europe, right? And then some regulations came in the area of lighting, tires, wheels, and rims. We also then in 2007 said, we want to bring the crash safety regulation for the cabins in India. We brought the regulation, but we did not mandate it. And this led to the fact that the cowl still prevails. When we entered the Indian market, 80% of the market was cowls. And even today, 20 to 30% of the market is cowl trucks. And we all know that if it's a half-built cabin and you have a wooden cabin on top, it will not meet any of the safety requirements which are mandatory or needed. So I guess a lot has to be done on the regulation side. We have a catch-up to do. And it's not only the job of government. I think the industry also has to partner with the government to change this game when it comes to safety.
Right. So from a regulatory standpoint, since you're emphasizing on that, over the last few years, we have seen, we've been hearing about, truck body code, bus body code, and there are specific cabin crash test standards that are in the offing or they've been implemented. So what are some of the key regulations that have emerged that have made the vehicles safer, or what more is needed from your perspective? 2 or 3 key, low-hanging fruits that can actually really help in ensuring that there are lesser number of lives that are lost on road, be it driver or pedestrian.
Yeah. So, Ketan, when it comes to the crash safety, it's very important how the cabin is designed and what kind of crash safety norms it fulfills. And there are 2 regulations I will talk about there. The first one is the ECR 29-02. It's a long phrase, but let's say the first step of regulation. What that regulation specifies is the crash safety norms till the lowest point of the windshield in the truck, right? Now, this is a regulation which has been there in Europe for decades. It was brought to India in 2007, but was not made mandatory, right? And this leads to the fact that still we have cowl trucks which are being sold in India. When we came to the market, we said we will not follow that, because when it comes to safety, we have to do what is right, not which is just only mandatory. Right? Now, why is that important? See, when you design a cabin with all the technology on simulation and design you actually create a kind of cocoon which gets formed in case there is a frontal collision. So in all Bharat-Benz cabins, in case there is a frontal collision, a cocoon is formed of empty space where the driver is sitting, which protects the driver's body from injury or harm. Right. The second aspect why more fatalities happen during accidents is, if an accident has happened and the driver is now stuck inside a mangled cabin, let's say, it takes sometimes hours to take him out and rush him to hospital. And we have seen in a lot of surveys that more than 20% of lives are lost because we just couldn't take out the body in time and take him to the hospital. Right. So what happens in, for example, a Bharat-Benz cabin is that this cocoon is formed, and it is formed in a way that it's very easy to take out the driver and rush him to the hospital. This is the advantage of using engineering and technology to build safer cabins. So I guess this is a very important first step, which has to be done, implemented in India and forced in India. The other thing is, we have to change our attitude towards safety. As I said, we have to think about doing what is not yet mandated, but beyond, right? And I give you some more examples. We came with ABS as standard way back in 2015. We brought a rear vision system, and I guess you can imagine how important it is for trucks. In 2017, we came with that technology. And in 2018, we brought another industry-leading technology, which is called driver state monitoring, right? Which is continuously looking at the driver and seeing whether the driver is attentive or fatigued or if he's drunk, right? So if he's trying to drive in an alcoholic state. I guess these are the technologies which are very, very important to ensure safety on the road. There's another important aspect when we talk about the body code, air conditioning. Now you would say, why is air conditioning linked to safety? Well, air conditioning has a very deep linkage to safety. If you read various surveys which are done on accidents on the Indian roads, one of the leading cause of accidents in the CV is the fatigue of the driver. If the cabin is not comfortable, if the cabin is not air conditioned, the drivers get fatigued easily. And we all know that they drive long hours, right? And then they end up making mistakes. And they end up in an error or an accident happens, right? So air conditioning is another aspect which we should not think that it's a comfort feature only. It's also a safety feature. We came with our trucks with 100% air conditioning right from the beginning. And, you know, to our surprise, and I think this is very important for everyone to know who's listening to this chat, when we started, only 30% of our customers asked for air-conditioned trucks. Again, with the thinking that it consumes more fuel. In fact, Bharat-Benz gives 3% better fuel efficiency with air conditioning, right? Today, about 65% of our sales are with air-conditioned trucks because the customers come back to us and say that they have happy drivers, they are more productive, and they feel much more safe. There's another very important aspect, you know, we have studied that a lot of drivers, a large population of drivers actually lose their hearing on the right ear because they drive continuously long hours with windows open. And we know the noise level on our roads, honking and the general noise level, right? They end up losing their hearing in the right ear. Not good for them and not good for safety. So if you have air-conditioned cabins, you keep the window closed, and that also doesn't happen.
If I could, push a little bit further on the cowl market, because like you said, when you entered, 80% of the market was cowl, and I know it must have been really tempting for, you entering one of the largest markets in the world and yet not get into the core of what majority of the truck prospective buyer wanted. What has been your understanding about what really drives the cowl market? It's cost? Is it the ecosystem of bodybuilders? And any data points would you have that, when you, in case of a crash, a full body truck, what is the incidence of a person saving his life vis-a-vis if he were to have met with an accident in a cowl body? So first, just the behavioral aspect of prospective buyers on choosing cowl. Is it merely cost? Is it the industry? What really drives the cowl market? And in case of a crash, how does a full body truck versus a cowl behaves? And if you have any empirical data evidence that you would have over the years of so many number of trucks you would have sold?
Sure. Well, first of all, why cowl, right? I think cost is definitely one part. It's much cheaper. At least it looks much cheaper when you buy a half-built cabin. What we don't end up calculating is that then you give the truck for building the full body, which takes sometimes up to a month and also has a cost involved. The time of 1 month also has a cost involved. So I guess when we do the total equation, it may not be that, let's say, cost or lower in cost, right? But that's one aspect. The second aspect is there is a perception that a cowl cabin remains much cooler during summers, which is completely wrong. Engineering-wise, it's completely wrong, right? A metal cabin is much, much better in that aspect. And the third aspect is, if you have some kind of minor accident or, something happened during driving with a cowl cabin, it's much easy to repair, which is a fact. You can get it repaired. roadside, but then it will not meet any crash safety norms, right?
Right.
So these are some of the perceptions which have been built around the cowl over the period of so many years. Technically and engineering wise, they all are wrong. And I think this is where we need to focus on. We need to educate the drivers. We need to educate the fleet owners because, when an accident happens, they end up losing a driver many times. And then you end up also spending so much time on repairing a truck. And that's lost business, right?
Right.
So that's a lot of collaterals in terms of compensating the family of the driver. Look at the family of the driver who lost their only source of livelihood. So if you put together all these things, I believe the answer is quite easy. What should we go for? And then the second thing you talked about was
how do you crash of a cowl versus
crash of a cowl versus a well-engineered cabin. Well, we've done some of these simulations, and those are mind-boggling. If you look at those simulations, you will clearly see you can't even compare a well-engineered cabin with a cowl. What happens to the dummy body we place there in terms of what it will face in case of a crash, right? So I think these are very, very important aspects. And earlier we talked about the first step of regulation, the R29-02. And this, as I said, is up till the windshield, the lowest point of the windshield. What about above, right? So the next step of regulation, which is already prevalent in Europe, is R29-03, right? And that ensures that the entire cabin, including the front windshield and the metal portion around it, provides crash safety to the driver. What happens during a crash is the driver tries to move, right, because of a frontal crash, and the metal portion around the windshield should actually crumple in a way to protect the driver from there. And I'm proud to tell this to you today and to all the viewers that without waiting for the regulations, Bharat-Benz cabins are now even certified for this 29-03. So we've not waited for regulation to come up. We are now providing the highest level of crash safety norms, which are prevalent in the world, also in Bharat-Benz in India.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. So in your view, you spoke about driver fatigue as well. A large part of the prospective buyers today are one or two single or, a small truck operator versus a major fleet operator. Majority of the market is still a small truck owner. And there's, as we know, there's immense paucity of drivers. So driver training becomes a very important element. One, they are not available. Second, the ones that are available are not literate or they are not skilled enough. Do you think, that is one of the biggest factors behind the higher proportion of casualties on account of accident in a commercial vehicle?
It is definitely a very important factor. I do not think it is the biggest one, but it is definitely a very, very important factor. Training is also an aspect of attitude, right? If we have an attitude towards safe driving or learning how to drive safe, we would definitely spend time on training or money on training. And I guess here, while we can say drivers should do that, it's our job to provide them this opportunity, right? So I believe it's a very, very important area of focus if we have to enhance safety on our roads. And, I think all the industry players, including us, we have been offering training to the drivers. I can speak on Bharat-Benz behalf. Since the beginning, we have a training center inside our factory where the drivers are trained. We created master drivers who are then sent across India to train other drivers. Before we hand over a truck to our customers, we offer training to their drivers in our dealerships, or we have regional training centers across India where those trainings are provided. Now, a limitation there is always the kind of infrastructure you need to create for training, right? It's not so easy to do that in the size, the length and breadth of our country. So very recently, we have come out with how can we use technology in order to enhance and scale up this training, right? So what we've done is we've created a simulated driver trainer, right? So you sit in the Bharat-Benz cabin and you have a screen in the front, and that simulator actually simulates real life driving conditions. It has got 27 driving modules, different kind of applications, different kind of road situations, mining to long haul expressways, everything is there. It is multilingual, so drivers who come with different language skills can also use it. It has artificial intelligence, so it kind of curates a training program for you. It measures your responses. It gives you a rating. It gives you the areas where you could improve.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Mr. Arya. Really appreciate your time.